We're in desperate need of a W. That's the problem. Today, we're going to be going over to a home game of sorts that Mariano invited us to. I think one of his friends is hosting it. Should be a really good time. The only problem is it's 2:30. It's about an hour and a half away and it starts at 4. So if we care about being punctual, we should probably get in this car and get the hell going. Let's go in. As I'm driving, I'm now realizing that I have not at any point addressed the car that I'm in. So you guys, a couple of you guys know that I had this car, but not to make it. I wrapped it in gold chrome, or rose gold chrome. I love pink. As you guys can see, my hair is also pink, or kind of pink. Thought I'd mention that at some point in the video. Now seemed fair. Now seemed like the right time to talk about it. Back to this hour and a half drive. Okay, welcome to the desert. Let's hop inside.
Well, we are here firing away in a home game, and I'm super excited. Today's episode has a ton of massive hands, a bunch of crazy shenanigans, and I'm telling you guys ahead of time, this is a really great episode. So, I know it's a lot to ask for up front, but if you guys can leave me a like, it'd go a really long way in helping the channel grow. In many ways more than you can actually even put into words actually. So again, click a like button, leave a comment down below guessing on if you guys think I win or I lose, and if I win or I lose, what number it would be. Let's hop into this very first hand. Oddly enough, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen in your games, every time I play the poker table, the Robbie Lou question comes up, whether she cheated or not. Well, instead of debating it in this entire episode, which would be kind of like beating a dead horse at this point, I will just raise with Jack 4. I find myself in the hijack with such a hand. I make it $75 to go. The blinds are 10.25. I'm starting with 4K, and for most of the episode, it'll actually be 10.25.50, even going up to 25.50, 100 at some points. I get a call from two players cut off in small blind. We're going off to a flop that comes Jack 8-5 rainbow. I decide to c-bet here for value, betting 150 bucks. Both players make the call, and the turn card comes at 3 of diamonds. This does introduce a backdoor flush draw, but the straight draws that were available don't come in, and even more so, not a whole lot really changes on this board texture. If I was ahead, I'm still ahead. If I'm behind, why not throw another bet for some reason? I decided to bet for $325. I'm looking to target hands that contain like diamond draws that'd be considering to float with backdoors. I think the small blind can definitely have a ton of like ace X of diamonds, king X of diamonds, as well as the player in the cutoff can actually maybe sometimes fold a hand as strong as Jack 9, Jack 10 even. So it maybe works decent as a merge bet. I don't really know if I'm being fair, but that's what I do. Unfortunately, both players call, so we're needing some help. And the river does come, in fact, help, as it comes a 4 of diamonds. Brings that backdoor flush draw in, but I'm a little less worried about it when the action's checked to me. There is a player behind me left to act, and I think I'd rather let my opponent bluff at it, or again, kind of control the size of the pot. I think it'd be a disaster if I bet here and I got raised from either player. 1, I'm not good enough to fold, and 2, it's hardly ever a bluff. So I decided to just check here and allow my opponents to blast off. Unfortunately, no one decides to bet, but the poker gods are running good in a way we did not see. Our check here saved us a ton of money, as we think we show our hand, and it's the good hand, it's the best hand, but that is not the fact, as our friend here from the small blind shows ace 6 of diamonds, so made a really nice float there on the flop and get on the river. Unfortunately for him, he can't get any more value. Little did he know that I would have given him a ton of it. So maybe things didn't work out for us in the first hand, but maybe it will in the second. In this current situation, I think we're 5 or 6 handed. We're still waiting for some players to come in. I'm in the $50 straddle. Mariano opens it up here for $150. The action's folded over to me. I looked down at ace king offsuit. I think that it's pretty mandatory in a short-handed game to 3-bet, but I think at the time I was like, I think Mariano's a really good player and he's capable of blasting off. So I decided to just play cautiously and call here. Having this as a trap is not the horrible idea, I think. The unfortunate thing is that I am out of position, which is, again, never good. So if I were to do this, I'd prefer to do this out of like the button or the cutoff, somewhere where I would have position on him. The flop comes out king 7-5, absolutely nothing to worry about. With the action checked over to Mariano, he decides to c-bet for $100. It's an easy call. I think raising here would be a little weird. Again, it's good to have a hand this strong as a raise, but hard to come up with a ton of random bluffs to have here. I think call is fine, so we're doing that. Turn card comes a queen of spades, brings a backdoor flush draw, and now would improve a hand like king queen. But beyond that, not a whole lot to be worried about. I check it over to Mariano once again, and again, he's a good player. He's going to put max pressure on me. He bets $500. He realizes that at this point, my range is kind of capped to about one pair. I'm probably never going to have a hand like king queen. It's hard to say never because I'm just flatting ace king here. Then, maybe I do. But in context, I shouldn't be flatting with hands this strong, this short-handed. So I decide to just make the call here, playing all rivers. The river card comes a jack of clubs. Now a little worrisome as a lot of his semi-bluffs now improve. If he decided to double barrel with a hand like ace 10, if he's just double barreling with a hand like queen jack or king jack, they get there. But again, I don't think to this specific sizing, queen jack would bet that big on the turn. I think specifically it'd be a hand like king queen, and even king jack I don't think would be going for that sizing either way. Anyways, with the action checked over to Mariano, I'm very scared here. I'm going to have to face a big bet. He ends up making the check back. We show our hand, and it is in fact good. There's one on the board. At this point, I don't even have the opportunity to get a breath in, let alone bring my chips in from the very last hand when we're dealt another big one. Mariano decides to raise here to $75. The cutoff decides to make the call, and the small blind 3-bets to $350. He's playing about $2,000 effective, and the action's over to me in the big blind, and I look down at pocket Kirons. Pocket kings, this is a really, really nice situation to be involved in. One, we've got some players that are here willing to get in the mix, and two, we just have a good hand, right? It's that easy. I decided to 4-bet here to $1,200, looking to isolate the specifically one player. It'd be unfortunate if I made it too small and allowed either one of my opponents to get involved in the hand. That'd be a disaster. Everyone folds. It gets back to the small blind, who ends up sticking it in there for $2,000 total. We have an easy call. We agree to run it twice. And as you guys can see from the boards here, they come out fairly clean. First one's a little scary as there's a little straighty, flushy situation there, but our opponent ends up exposing his hand ace-queen there. So flopped a big one on the first board as he had an open ender to the nuts, but did not find a way to improve. Happy very much so to end up winning that one out. Getting two clean boards is hard, even when you have pocket kings. Not too much longer, we get involved in another hand. I find myself in the cutoff with ace-jack offsuit. I make it $75 to go, and the big blind makes a call. The flop comes ace-king-10 with 2 clubs and a heart. With the action on me, I decide to throw out a small bet of $25. 50 makes more sense. I make it 25 though, kind of a misclick to be fair. Opponent makes a call. We're going off to a turn card that comes as 6 of hearts. Doesn't change anything at all. With the action checked over to me, a hand as strong as this, I think it sets up perfectly as a 2-street hand here. So I end up checking it back. The river comes a 4 of spades here. The club draw misses. Our opponent ends up leading out for $125. Very easy call for us here. We go ahead and just make the call. Either way, we end up winning another pot. Let's move on. By this point, we've been going at like 100 miles an hour in the right direction. Things have been going really, really great, almost uncontested by this point, and we have another really great one. As in this situation, there's a $50 straddle on. I'm on the button, and I look down at pocket Kirons once again. I don't even think we're 2 or 3 hours into the session. We've got kings twice, ace-king twice. I mean, what else can you ask for? I decided to raise it up here to $150. Mariano is in the big blind and makes a call. The straddle calls as well. 3 ways off to a flop that comes 9-4-6 rainbow. Well, with the action checked over to me, I've talked about this. I preach about this every single episode something like this happens. It's really important to find checks on flops like this. Sometimes it's a rainbow board that seems pretty innocuous and almost impossible of hurting me in any way. And that's the thing. This is just a board that I'm not going to connect with too much. And like I said, I'm probably way ahead at this point. The worst thing that can happen here, I think, is if I bet and get raised, that I'm kind of playing at a really weird situation. Granted, I am in position, which is good, and I do have pocket kings, so it's not too much to be worried about. But it's nice to have a check here, which I end up doing. We're going off to a turn card. In this case, it comes the 5 of diamonds, introducing a backdoor flush draw. And another interesting thing is that obviously a straight does come in. Now with the action on Mariano, he goes for massive sizing here. Ends up betting $450, somewhere in the neighborhood of the pot. With the action on me, I think we have a very clear-cut, easy, just call. We're going off to a river card that comes the queen of clubs. Changes nothing to the board texture. Straight is still straight. I don't think that my opponent would be choosing a pot size bet with a hand like queen 9, jack 9, 10 9. I think our opponent's definitely going to have a hand like ace x of diamonds, king x of diamonds. It's a little worrisome when we find ourselves on the river and Mariano decides to go again for a size pot bet of $1,350. I think there's no decision here. When I decide to play my hand as a check on the flop, I have 100% chance to do this and this only. Call, call. We did this, all of this, so that we just go call, call. But unfortunately, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding between me and the dealer. I say, excuse me, you got to put the pot, push the pot this way. I can't reach it from over there. And I realized that she's pushing it farther and farther away from me. I'm like, what's going on, dealer? Well, excuse me? Yeah, I didn't win the pot. Mariano did not have a straight, but he did in fact have a set of fours. So it seems like we ended up dodging a massive bullet there. If I c-bet the flop, I get raised, and there's a great chance all of the money gets in the middle. So somehow I lost the minimum, and I almost never say those words. I find a way to lose the max every time. I don't know if that's a perfect thing to do. I don't even want to pretend or push down this information down your throats as this was the right thing to do. But usually in my strategy, it just works okay for me. I think that these kind of hands set up really perfectly as if he checks me on the turn, I'd bet pot. And if he checks me on the river, I'd probably bet pot too. So, either way, worked out okay, I guess in this specific context. Well, after that very fun last hand, we've gone from a pretty big winner to slightly in the hole. This one's really important for me. I think the problem I have in most of my poker sessions is I don't have a massive amount of allotted time to play. I'm constantly working or making videos or this and that. And the thing with something like this that's planned days and weeks in advance is I can allot a specific amount of time for this activity, which I almost never get to do. So today, there's nothing on the schedule. My whole day is set to be here at this home game, which means that I can play my A game, I can be significantly more patient, and I can kind of let the game come to me as opposed to me pushing the envelope. Mariano raises to $75. I'm in the big blind with queen 9 suited. I call, flop is queen high. I end up checking it over to him. He ends up betting $50 as a c-bet. I end up making the call here. The turn card comes a deuce of hearts, bringing a backdoor flush draw. The action's checked over to him, and he decides to check it back. The river card comes a 9 here, helps me in very many ways, specifically the fashion of making me 2-pair. This is the only reason I put this in the video today is to show that, not things are perfect, and when I do something wrong, I hate it. I decided to lead out here for a massive bet of $275, going over the size of the pot. All right, you might think, okay, why is that bad? Or are you scared of something? Why'd you bet so big? Blah, blah, blah. The problem I have with this bet is that when Mariano decides to check back the turn, he has a ton of showdown value, or he has an absolute bluff airball that he just doesn't have the opportunity to bluff with. Or 2, he's going to realize equity with a hand as good as king jack. And it'd be really stupid for me to go the size of the pot and allow a good enough player like him to just pot it back with a good blocker. I think by checking this river, I'll make significantly more money by letting him bet when he has a hand and bet when he doesn't. I think I give him a massive, massive ability to just get away from the hand when I lead out here. It's just a bad lead. Anyways, he ends up thinking about it for quite some time, pulls out some raising chips, and I'm taking a big gulp gosh darn, what did I just back into? But he thinks better of it and decides to fold. Granted, as he was folding, his hand ended up flipping over, and we did see a king exposed. So obviously, a really good player like him is even considering making that bluff there with the king blocker, realizing it's going to be hard for me to have the nuts here. Just shout out to him, man. That's pretty freaking gangster. It's significantly better for me to check and see a bet of $300, and I can easily make the call versus me betting out the size of the pot or even more than that and getting raised to $1,300. That'd just be a massive disaster. There's a $50 bomb pot I think we're 6 ways. We're going off to a flop. On the top board that comes king, king 7, and the bottom board that comes ace, ace 7. So it'd be nice to have a hand like ace, king. Wait, there's now a lead from the small blind for $175. With the action folded over to me, we look down at our hand for the first time and we see something gorgeous. Ace, king, 6, 3. Forget the 6-3. We have ace king. We have an amazing hand. I think I don't play PLNO enough to know how equity is run in this thing, but there's only 1 ace left and 1 king left. Well, I think it'd be best here to just call. I think my hand's super, super strong, and I don't see the merit in raising, I don't think. I don't know what I'm doing in this game, to be quite fair. So we're going off to a turn card heads up. There comes a jack of spades on the top board and a jack of clubs on the bottom board. So another kind of interesting wet-ish kind of turn card, as it does bring in the flush on one of the boards and it does bring in a flush draw on the other one. At this point, the small blind decides to lead out for pot here for $600. I think our hand's way too good to fold. I make the call, and we're going off to a river card that comes a deuce of spades on the top board, bringing in that backdoor flush, and the ace of spades on the bottom board, giving us quads. My, oh my, baby. That's a pretty good hand. I think quads are good. I think I might suck at PLO. I might suck at PLO double board bomb pots. But what I don't suck at is understanding that quads are good, especially when there's no straight flush draw out there. We have the absolute nuts. With the action on the small blind again, he decides to lead out for a bet of $1,800. I think we have a pretty easy just jam here. Hope to get an opponent off a fold, or a chop, excuse me, or even sometimes getting a call by a worse king. I jam for about 3,500. The opponent decides to pretty quickly call. We show our hand, and our opponent shows king deuce, so ended up getting lucky on the river to some extent, banking that little outer there. We would have had a massive pot to ship in our direction if that wasn't the case. It feels good to make quads. In this next hand, I find myself in the button with jack 10 of clubs. I race to $75. The small blind calls. The flop comes queen, jack 8 with 2 clubs and a heart, flopping ourselves a beautiful flush draw as well as a gut shot straight draw. I mean, what else could we have asked for? Maybe quads again? Nah, that would have been a little too much. In this case, the opponent checks it over to me. I see bet pretty small here for $75. Our opponent makes a call, and the turn card comes the ace of diamonds. Here's another situation where I make an error, and I'm not going to hide from it. Our opponent checks, and I decide to bet for $250. I don't know what in the world what am I doing here? Like, sure, I pick up a double gutter, I had more equity, but like, why bet? We should be realizing our equity. The last thing we want to do is bet $250 and then get raised. As you guys can see, we're getting raised. Luckily, the opponent makes it pretty small, only $600. Only $350 more dollars for me to go. Any 9, any king, any club, any jack probably gives us a good hand here. So I'm going to go ahead and make the call here. Our opponent can definitely have sometimes a better flush draw, although it'd be really, really unlikely. And more often than not, I think our opponent can have a really strong hand like a mage straight or even 2 pair. All of that being said, ends up just going out the window. As a river card comes as 6 of clubs, we end up making what feels like the effective nuts here. Our opponent decides to bet out $900. With the action on me, there's nothing else to do here besides deciding to jam for $1,900 total. Our opponent has somewhere in the neighborhood of 1K behind. He pretty quickly folds and would later tell me that he had queen jack, but this is Ernie, the Earn Dog. The Flea is what he goes by. And to be quite fair, there's a good chance he just had an absolute airball and decided to tell me that he had queen jack. But either way, good hand to you, sir. We're going to take this one down, courtesy of a club on the river. Once again, the straddle is going to be on in this next hand. Under the gun makes it $150 to go. I find myself on the button with pocket 7s. I make the call here, and the flop comes jack, jack 4 rainbow. Villain bets $25 or $125. I don't think anything here besides calling makes sense, so I do just that. Turn card comes at 3 of diamonds, bringing a backdoor flush draw. Action checks through here, and the river card comes a beautiful 7 of clubs. I told you we're running hotter than the sun at this point. At this point, our opponent decides to bet $450. Actually, a pretty big bet here, nice and meaty. I think our opponent is obviously polarized here. I think that doing anything besides raising would be just so astronomically stupid. The only hand that we lose here to is jack 7, jack 4, and pocket jacks, I guess, which is, yeah, what are we saying? Like, come on. Jack 3, jack 4, jack 7, probably not in the under the gun raising range, unless it's Robbie or something. I really don't know. But I end up going for a bet of $1,300 as a raise. Our opponent makes a fold, and we're going to go ahead and ship another pot, courtesy of a 7 on the river this time. This next pot is a really fun one as well. The hijack decides to limp for 50 bones. I find myself in the cutoff with ace-jack offsuit. Isolation is mandatory, $200 to go. Only the limper calls, and the flop comes pretty meh as it comes king, queen, jack. Meh because it doesn't hit my specific holding too well, but it's actually really, really good for my range. With the action checked over to me, I think our opponent's going to have a ton of like random middling pairs. And the only thing that I said that we're really worried about is going to be a hand specifically that's like 9-10. Either way, I decided to just check this through, playing my hand for its merit, as getting it to showdown makes the most sense. Turn card comes as 6 of hearts. Once again, the action is checked through, and the river card comes at deuce of diamonds. Our opponent decides to bet out on the river for $200, which is kind of big here. Our opponent hasn't shown the propensity to bluff too often, and I find myself in a little bit of a bind here, as initially I think that because the front door flush gets there on the river, it's actually a little better for me than our opponent. I'd suspect at some point he'd be taking over the reins of the hand by betting here with a flush draw, specifically on the turn. And moreover, I have the jack of diamonds, so I actually consider raising for a brief moment before realizing that'd be an absolute punt. It's not even a nut blocker, and it would just be so stupid. Why would I do that? I have a good hand. It's a great hand that works, I think, as a bluff catcher on the river. So after a bit of thinking, I talk myself off the edge and realize that giving action and calling light is probably not that bad in this game. I end up giving it back, letting our opponent know that we are just calling to be a calling station. And our opponent shakes his head a little bit, and it hits me pretty quickly that, oh man, I have to best hand somehow. He flips over pocket 5, so outstanding bluff from him. We love to see it. We love to see people getting in the mix. Unfortunate for him, he ran into the biggest calling station in Southern California. This one's a really, really good one, so let's buckle up together. In this hand, the hijack limps for $25. I find myself in another situation where I want to isolate my opponent. I look down at King 7 of hearts. Not great, probably pretty borderline, but I've had a pretty good handle on the game, and I've been really good with my image. $125 to go with King 7 here. Mariano's on the button. He has position. The button's the ultimate thing in poker. He makes the call defending that. Limper calls as well. We're going off to a flop that comes ace, 9, 4, 2 spades. Action on me here. I decided to c-bet here as this is a pretty good board for my range. I bet $150. Not the worst bet sizing in the world. I think a third works fine. This is a pretty dry board texture for the most part besides the flush draw. Mariano makes a call, limper folds, and the turn card comes a jack of spades. I think at this point, our opponent is going to have all of the flushes, and I'm going to be a little less likely considering the ace is the ace of spades. But I decided to bet for $325 just thinking that, hey, aggression's good. Capitalize on my image. Let's go. Mariano makes the call, and we're going off to a river card that comes with 3 of spades. At this point, I just do something different than I was expecting. I was expecting to just blast this river, but on a river like this, I think my opponent, if he doesn't have a spade, just has to fold to most bet sizings. And if he hasn't raised at any point in the hand, maybe he has a hand like ace X with no spade and has to just make a hero fold. So I decided to bet pretty small, giving myself the opportunity to win the hand, needing to win the hand less often for it to work by bluffing for so small compared to the size of the pot. Make it $250, and Mariano snap calls with 7, 6 of spades. Great. It was just great play by him. I think I was really disappointed with myself after the hand. I don't think he really is in the situation where he wants to be folding on that river. I think I'm just more disappointed that I chose this specific hand out of position against one of the killers of the table. I think we could have chosen a lot of other instances to pull off a big bluff like this, and this was just a stupid one. So tip your cap off to the player when they smack you in the face, and you just kind of live with it. This session has been super swinging, back and forth, and once again, we find ourselves just a little bit above even. All right, so this next hand ends up being a massive one, and my phone had died as it was happening, but as you guys will see, I end up catching the footage with my other phone. As it's going on, I didn't realize the other phone was dead. You get what I'm trying to say. Let's hop into the hand. There's a straddle on at this point. $50 is the new price of poker. I'm in the button. I decided to raise to $150 with ace-king offsuit. The straddler decides to throw out the old 3-bet to $450. And with the action on me, I think we can go several ways here. 4-betting makes a ton of sense, but we're kind of really, really deep here. I mean, whether we realize it or not, we're playing like 200 big blinds effective. So I think just calling is actually pretty reasonable. We're going off to a flop that comes ace, 6, 5 rainbow. With the action on our opponent, he decides to bet out a massive whopping $1,000. Kind of a little bit worrisome, but this sizing is so massive that I just don't think it's ever going to be aces, 6s, or 5s. Our opponent is doing something interesting. Why not just compound on interesting behavior by making a stupid one by raising here for whatever reason? I make a raise to $2,500, and our opponent snap raises all in here. When I was raising, before I was even able to speak through my thought process, I was snap jammed in my face. I just thought that I can get a lot of money from a hand like ace-queen here. Ace-queen suited makes a ton of sense. I think our opponent can definitely get carried away with that. Yeah, I don't think this line is ever going to be taken by a hand like pocket aces. So I have a pretty easy call here. And this is shaped up somehow into being a ridiculously $15,000 pot. We realize pretty quickly that we have the same freaking hand. So pretty anticlimactic, a massive pot that would have really shifted me in a whole different hemisphere. But at the end of the day, it's nice that we didn't run into it because I feel like we've been running into it a lot. And we're going to go ahead and take a nice little chop pot. Everyone loves chop pot, right? As the session now continues to wind down here, I think we're just slightly ahead in the game. Nothing's really gone too out of whack in any direction. I think we've done a good job of continuing to keep our composure. In this next hand, the under the gun player decides to limp here. I'm actually in the restroom to start this hand. The small blind ends up raising to $50. Very interesting sizing. I looked on a queen six of spades here from the big blind against a min click when there's already $25 for me, $25 for the limper in the middle. I end up just throwing in the call here for $25 more. Under the gun limper decides to call as well. We're going 3 ways off to a flop that is unbelievably dynamic as it comes 10-8-7 with 2 spades. With the action on the small blind, he decides to lead out for $100. We have a pretty easy just call here. Much to my surprise, the limper decides to just jam here for $1,170. A massive, massive raise here. Even more worrisome is that our opponent in the small blind is tanking, and tanking for quite some time. He ends up passing his hand around the table, letting him know that it'd be nearly impossible to ever fold this. He ends up deciding to make the call, leaving himself somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,500 to $3,000 remaining in his stack. Now, with as much money in the middle as there is, it just makes a ton of sense to just make the call here. We're drawing to a gut shot as well as the second or third nut flush. So with all that equity, it'd just be foolish, I think, to fold. So I end up making the call here, and the turn card is one of absolute glory. It comes a 9 of hearts. We now make the bottom end of the straight. Sure, we are a little worried about a hand like jacks, but even against that hand, we have a genuine, full-blown free roll. Yes, we do, because we don't have a free roll actually. We have a chance to get there with the flush draw. Anyways, with the action checked over to me, I'm almost confident now that my opponent does not have jacks. He probably has a hand like aces or kings. So why not put that opponent in a bind here? I decide to jam all in, all of it, every single penny, about $2,500 going into the middle. Our opponent doesn't waste a second before deciding to make the call. We end up agreeing to run it twice, and you will not believe what the hell our opponents have. This hand has now become one of the biggest coolers that I've been involved with in my entire life, as our opponents show top set and bottom set. Oh my goodness, what a flop. Good friend of the vlog, Ernie, shows pocket sevens here, so an absolute disaster. Horrible, horrible situation for him. We definitely feel for him, as the day hasn't gone in his direction. And here the other gentleman shows top set of tens, and somehow queen six has a massive stranglehold on this holding. The first river comes out, an ace of spades improving us to a flush, and the second one comes out the king of clubs. Unbeknownst to them, king six of spades is the nuts here, I guess, effectively, and we end up raking in an astronomical pot here. Feels great to be on the right side of a cooler. If you saw that top set and bottom set were somehow beaten by queen six of spades, you think I was making this shit up or I was playing ACR, but that's not the case. Good hand, gentlemen. That was a wild one. At this point, I think I'm 10 hours or 9 hours into the session. I'm nearly falling asleep at the table, but there's still poker to be played. The straddle is on. Another gun decides to limp here. The button decides to isolate to $200. I look down at my hand and see ace king of clubs, and for some reason, autopilot is on, and I just call here. I think this is just bad poker. I realize I'm sleepy and maybe I'm not playing my A game, but this is just a mandatory 3-bet. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just not into this play. I think this is horrific. I think that 3-betting is important, and having a hand like this balances out when I do this with ace 5, when I 3-bet with those hands. So just like a massive goober move, but it is what it is. Anyways, we're going heads up, or excuse me, 3 ways to a flop as the limper calls. That comes jack 5-3 with 2 clubs. We end up flopping 2 overs and then a flush draw. Action checks over to the initial raiser, who bets pretty big here for $500. I think at this point, I don't like massively overplaying my draws out of position against really good players. I just make the call here. We're going off to a turn card that comes with 3 of hearts, pairing the board. We check it over to our opponent, who decides to bet $1,100. Action back on me. I can go in between a lot of different options, but I end up deciding on making the call. We're going off to a river card that comes a deuce of diamonds. We don't improve in any fashion here. I decide to check it over, looking to just relinquish this holding, wave the white flag. But our opponent ends up checking it back, which is surprising to me, and even more surprising when I announce ace high, and it's somehow good. We're going to take that pretty massive pot. That was what, like a 3-4K pot or whatever, that we severely misplayed in every single spot. But that's what happens when your eyes are bloodshot red, you don't do drugs, and you're falling asleep at the poker table. Let's move along to the last hand of the session, which is an absolute blast. I've announced that I'll be leaving at 2 o'clock in the morning as I'm falling asleep at the table, and I still have an hour and a half drive home. With all that being said, we agreed on doing the stand-up game, and here we are, me versus Mariano, as the other two gentlemen in the game have found a way to win a pot already. Things are seeming fairly grim until we look down at Ace King. Big slick here. We decide to raise, and unfortunately for Mariano, he is unable to 3-bet us or call, and he has to fold his button. All I have to do now is get through 2 players, but they won't make it that easy ever. They both make the call. We're going 3 ways off to a flop that is pretty dismal, as it comes queen 9-3 with 2 diamonds. With the action checked over to me here, I think I'm not going to be in the business of c-betting these boards here. One, I just don't want to get blasted off my holding, as dumb as it sounds. Ace high might not be good here sometimes, but a lot of the times it will be. Anyways, the turn card comes a king, Yahtzee. There's a key on when you needed one. The king of clubs turns here. With the action checked over to me once again, it'd be foolish for me not to go for value, so I make it $250 to go in the neighborhood of 2/3 pot here, going bigger. Our friend Matt goes deep into the tank before eventually deciding, even with all the egging on, as you guys can see from the footage, he is not able to do anything. And then our friend here from the big blind decides to do something we were not expecting and raise to $900. I'm not in it. I'm not going to be folding top. I snap call and announce very quickly that my hand's just way too good to fold. He lets me know that my hand is in fact good. We somehow faded losing our very first ever stand-up game that will be happening very often, literally very often, like all the time. If you guys want to play in the private game that we're hosting, that's really funny. Super, 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 super funny day. I can't thank the game runners enough for putting it together. It was a ton of fun. We've played it once before with Mariano and Ethan as well. It was a ton of fun. This time around, outstanding session, a massive, massive win in my favor. I can't complain. I got slapped in the face by the deck, but before we get too far down the line, let's start over me in person. Let's see how we feel at the end of the session. Well, that was quite the experience. So much so that I came home and just absolutely just pretty much died. It was an hour-and-a-half drive back home. Well worth it, as you guys can see. Things just really panned out in our favor. Just want to give a massive thank you to everyone that's been consistently following these videos. I know that, yeah, maybe the views aren't where we'd want them to be. The interaction and the community that we've built is still amazing. And the sheer support that I'm still receiving means the world to me. So thank you guys so much for following and enjoying the videos. But you guys are curious about the numbers, so let me give you the numbers. Gotta pull up the app, quickly. So we were into the game for $4,000 and we were out of the game for $11,300, marking our second or third biggest win, I think, on the channel to date. Yeah, that's pretty freaking gnarly. Considering that we just found a way to, for the most part, stay out of the way of most landmines. The only really crazy hand that we played that I think we ended up losing the minimum was a set over pair situation against Mariano. So props to him. He's just one of the few players able or capable to be balanced, I guess, in that area, to have bluffs and value. So yeah, he played great and had to pay him off, you know what I mean? It'd be a disrespect if I fold kings, I think, there to him. Either way, I appreciate you guys for consistently supporting these videos. If you guys will do me a massive favor and click the like button, we're doing a giveaway. I'm going to give away $300. Well, $100 to 3 people, so $300 total. If you guys comment and like this video, make sure you subscribe, share this with a friend, and then go to our podcast channel, which is linked down below, and comment on the most recent video there, and subscribe to the podcast channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you very, very much for staying to this part of the video. I hope you guys have a lovely day. Stay happy, stay healthy, and more importantly, guys, we're good at the tables. Deuces.